Hello, everyone. Welcome to my podcast, Minecraft Peace. I'm your host, Katerina Newbury, and it's my great pleasure to have Sam Moinet today as my guest. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Katerina. So excited to be here.
Yeah, really good to have you. We met in the wonderful world of LinkedIn just last week, I think it was. And I was really drawn to what you were sharing about supporting teachers, supporting students. Sam's business is called Student Breakthrough. We'll talk about that. And he's passionate about supporting the emotional well-being of students and teachers, which is very close to my heart. So I thought I want to speak to Sam and find out more. So welcome. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm really well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that introduction. And I'm looking forward to seeing where we go.
Yes. So Sam's joining me from Portugal, lucky him. And we'll spend the next, I don't know, half an hour, 40 minutes talking about all things well-being of our young people, our own. And I guess I'll start with the introduction that really caught my eye, which is that Sam calls himself an education disruptor, leading the revolution in student well-being. Sam is a coach, and I wonder how does one become a disruptor in education?
Yeah, I think great question to start with. The education disruptor point was something that I really tapped into, I think about April last year. I had this awareness of I'm doing so much great work in bringing coaching into schools, which in itself is a bit disruptive because it's a totally different approach.
Mm,
But I was doing this great work. I was improving mental health with kids and teachers, but I started to realize that you can have a bigger impact if you were to change, a bit more, if you want to transform the system from underneath, if that makes sense,
mm,
because what I'm basically doing is very transactional. It's like looking at the top down, how can we fix the problems that are being caused by the stuff that's happening underneath?
mm, mm,
And the education disruptor point was really, if we can change parts of the system, then I don't have to technically be there to improve mental health
mm,
because there's little examples. If we teach so much, there's like, here's one example, right? Curriculum. We teach so much stuff to these students from a very young age, filling their minds with just so much content. And a lot of the time, that content, I believe, could be trimmed down a little bit. So here's an example.
mm,
During COVID, when I was teaching history, we would teach usually 4 topics at GCSE, and that went down to 3 during COVID. So straight away, you're reducing the amount the students are learning. Now, this is a very small example, but
mm,
you can imagine when I saw this that there was less pressure on teachers
mm,
to like get through all this content. The students had more time to absorb the material, to have more of a love of learning. We could explore different topics, and you could, I don't know the actual stat, but you could probably bet that by reducing that amount of stuff they were learning, the mental health would actually be improved a little bit,
mm.
even by 1-2%. So that's what I mean by the disruptor part. Yeah, we can do some great stuff transactional on the surface, but to actually change things, there has to be a transformation from
Mm.
beneath. And that's the whole education disruptor point for me, anyway, that we've got to look for more of we've got to fix the causes, right? And not just the symptoms.
I love that. Very symptomatic of what's going on in society across the board, not just treating symptoms, but looking at what's causing them. And you were in the perfect position as a teacher, someone who's worked in the system, got to know it through and through, understand both sides, the students as well as the teacher's perspective, and how hard it is to make any changes, I guess, because I myself am passionate about education and the system. I can see all the flaws, but I am not in the system. I have a lot of friends who are teachers who are currently frustrated because they'd like to change things. They see, like you have witnessed, how many young people are struggling with learning and mostly their mental health. And as someone who is in the kind of emotional well-being business, if you like, to learn efficiently, the one prerequisite to be successful is that you need to have a regulated nervous system. Yeah, you need to be able to take in what is being kind of presented to be able to analyze, to think, to have inspiring ideas. In order for that, if you don't have the baseline of someone who is, feeling good in themselves, that stuff's just not going to get through. And it still feels like this message isn't understood across the kind of education system, or it is, but the way it's set up doesn't allow for this to kind of I don't know, be put in place or so what. So maybe you can just comment on that a little bit from your experience, what you've observed.
Yeah, I think it's so true that they made, they changed the curriculum back in 2018, for instance. They made the exams much harder, and this is at GCC. They changed a lot of the curriculum, and again, it's like top-down pressure without building strong foundations, and it led to so many problems and challenges, especially with amount of students that are wanting to go to school. Number one, I mean, I think kind of like 1 million students in the UK don't attend school for various reasons. And 40,000 teachers leave the job each year.
Yeah.
And you'd argue if the system is flourishing, or if you did have those strong foundations of nurturing, of strong well-being, of emotional intelligence, all the stuff that we know is important, then you'd argue that the top-down stuff would take care of itself.
Yeah.
The more you put in the top of the bucket, if that makes sense, you've got to have ways for it to to be supported underneath. And if that's not there, then you're going to be in a system that is constantly struggling and fighting an uphill battle. But a lot of this stuff has been there for years, especially like teachers wanting to lead the profession. That stat of 40,000 teachers typically has been that way for decades. But the problem we've got is that not enough teachers are coming in to fill those spaces. So you've got like 40% of recruitment is down in some areas. Because again, why would you come into a profession where you are or not feel heard, not feel respected, not feel understood? And also it's been dragged through the mud, hasn't it? Like the education system recently, well, in the UK, we're talking about here. And really it's about bringing more love and compassion and respect back to our teachers who have the most important role to play. And just nurturing. And that's why the stuff that I'm doing with the coaching and lots of other people with their own little businesses are disrupting from the outside in, but that's the only way I can really see it at the moment happening. Like stronger together from the outside, and then we can create change from the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you said in one of your talks about you can't move a whole mountain. You have to start by taking like little pieces, I don't know, little stones, little pebbles. That's how you kind of going to dismantle the massive structure that the system is. But yeah, the only way to do it is like little bits. And yeah, I really like that. And I liked how you talk to teachers about bringing in, looking at what they can do where they are now. And you talk about having a heart with ears. I really like that. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you mean by that.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite phrases, because teachers are so swamped and they're so busy, and they've got a lot of different responsibilities. And from training teachers for the last 4 or 5 years, at the end of every course, I've shown them loads of different tools and exercises and things to help the mental health of kids and coaching. They always comment on this, which is what I really learned was the skill of listening and how to be a better communicator, and not communicating by telling, but communicating by asking. And the heart with ears distinction really means, like, if you imagine you taking like all your energy from your heart center and you put that on your ears and you listen with full empathy and really putting yourself in someone else's shoes, then we can build connection. And there's, so many other things with this. I love that, most of us have been given the gift, and it is a gift, right? To be able to hear and listening to and hearing sounds. But this, like, hearing is a physiological phenomenon. Most of us like have been given that gift, but listening is a psychological act.
Mm.
And it blows their brain. Like it's so simple. This is what I love about the stuff that I do, is that it's very, very simple. It's not, it's nothing too technical, because you've got to keep it simple for teachers, because they've got so much stuff going on. So if they do all this training, but they just learned this one thing, that when this student comes to speak to them, when Katerina is upset, instead of looking at their email or just fobbing her off or just giving her a solution, just for 30 seconds, just teach her hat off, coach her hat on, and listening to understand, not just to reply. And that's what I mean by the mountain.
Mm.
Now, that is not going to change the education system, but it's a teeny ripple effect. It's a small stone that you take away, and a teeny ripple effect that you're building better connections with your students. And that student then might go home and be, a little bit calmer as a result. They might be able to regulate their emotions a bit more. They might feel, okay, wow, actually was able to be heard. Because that's what most young people are lacking. That's what a lot of society is lacking, that ability to be, heard and respected and valued.
Be seen, be heard, be valued. Yeah. It's two things popped up for me as you said that. I really resonate, by the way, with how you describe it. And one is the skill to listen is something we can develop. And I know you practice meditation. Has meditation helped you to develop this skill, or do you bring it into your coaching?
Yeah, meditation's been unbelievable for me. So when I was teaching, I was really struggling with anxiety. And this wasn't just anxiety of, worried about Monday on a Sunday night, the Sunday scaries. This was escalated quite heavily to the point where, like, I couldn't get out of my bed to teach and get into school, and had a breakdown in front of a group of kids. And it led to being like a chronic insomniac as well. So I was getting very minimal sleep. I was in this constant loop, this dark storm cloud of anxiety, being spun around like a tornado. And I got some really bad advice. I read many different books on how to control my sleep. So it was like, have a bath.
Sorry,
like,
I'm laughing.
Yeah, no, laugh. It's like some of the advice is like, control, right? So no caffeine, spray lavender on your pillows, sleep masks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all this stuff to control. And I read a great book by a guy called Dr. Guy Meadows, who founded an organization called the Sleep School, who are bringing mindfulness and acceptance and commitment therapy into the world of insomnia. And when I started reading this book, it was the first time I'd really ever kind of heard of mindfulness. And it was just the ability to obviously separate my thoughts from reality and just notice that. So instead of like seeing my bedroom, and a bit of acceptance and commitment therapy, which is, instead of fighting, it's accepting what is. So it's a bit of, instead of, I've got this thought about sleep and I'm not going to sleep tonight and bada, 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 a simple technique here is that, I notice I'm having the thought that I might be struggling to sleep tonight. And there's that distance. So I got into mindfulness, and then that got me into meditation. I joined a meditation group in my hometown. And that then led to me getting really into Buddhism. I joined the Brixton Buddhist Center, and I was going on lots of silent retreats, and meditation was really starting to transform my life, bring me into the present moment. And yes, definitely helping my connections with others, especially when you do like meditations like the Metta Bhavana, which is like loving kindness and cultivating that. And that's a massive empathy meditation. Now I use that style of meditation with teachers. And if they've never done that before, if you're not familiar with this meditation, it's usually a 5-part meditation where you create good energy and feelings for yourself, for a good friend, for a neutral person, so someone you maybe see but you don't know, and then a difficult person, so someone you have a challenge with. And for the teachers that have never done this before, they find that quite challenging in itself to cultivate that. And then the 5th stage is you imagine all these people together, and then you spread the energy out to your town anyway. So that's really, really useful for the teachers. And then for any coaching session I do now with students, I always start with a meditation. Even if it's a 2-minute body scan or checking in with
Mm.
us, what they can hear and stuff like that, because we go through so all of our day, moment to moment to moment. I'm not saying I'm the Buddha of reached enlightenment here, like I struggle with this for sure, but like we go through different stages of our day, moment to moment to moment, and we never really pause and think, well, like how am I feeling in this moment right now, and also what's my intention for this next part of my day, if that makes sense. And when we can
Mm.
just pause a little bit and have a bit more like, okay, cool, like awareness. Again, I'm just sighing here talking about it. Just brings us back into the present moment. So for students who've had a busy day, they might be interacting with their mum and dad, they've had like school and all this stress. Before I coach them, we have to ground ourselves into this moment,
Mm. Yeah.
and it does make the session more effective. And I bring it into I've led one of my highlights of last year was leading. We had a room full of about 150 people, and I led them through a guided visualization meditation. And oh man, the energy in the room was so great.
Mm.
Having this many people all like obviously connecting with their breath, but then also thinking about their future self was
Mm.
mega powerful. So yeah, that's what I mean for teachers. Like they're not very exposed to this stuff,
Yeah.
and if you can bring it into the classroom,
Mm.
it can make a massive difference to your practice and the lives of your students.
Yeah. I love that. It's the expansion of the heart that I find has the most tremendous effect and impact on others. Something that was I'm kind of cultivating, but as a result of meditating for many years now, I got into meditation for similar reasons. For me, it was depression, not anxiety. Um, Postnatal depression when my boys were small, and yeah, very much resonate with the insomnia side of things, which as a new parent is not great because you're already sleep deprived, and that constant the constant voice basically just churning these kind of negative thoughts that you're just kind of trapped in without having the not creating any space for any reflection, pause, or anything like that. So yeah, I used to think like, meditation is just for like monks in a temple somewhere in the Himalayas or something. But no, I'm a yeah, very much a convert now, because shame the word still has for some people connotation of what I've just described, because all it is about regulating the nervous system so that we can really kind of enjoy life at the end of it. That's what we're here for, not here to struggle, not plow through, just, go through the motions. But yeah, it's kind of up to us to make the changes so that we can live life in that way. I love what you've described with the room full of people. And I think the experience they went through and what they took away from it will be with them for the rest of their lives. So that's why I love so much what I do, is that it's about the experience of that state. That is kind of what really matters to me, for people to feel, to experience, and then move from that, bringing into their lives. What have you found have been the biggest struggles that the young people kind of were dealing with, those that you ended up supporting as a coach?
Yeah, so typically the students would be around like 14 to 18. Um, Probably more typical, I'd work with girls
Mm.
um, than guys, although I've probably had a mixture. But in the early days, I remember there's a lot of anxiety, maybe because that's what I went through. Um, but typically it's what most people I think struggle with, which is the feeling of not being good enough.
Mm.
Um, but when we're coaching, I've had therapy and counseling, and coaching. So I'm big into this stuff, right? I've had, I've had a pretty good taste of different forms of this support. And obviously, as a coach, you're not a medical doctor, you're not a psychotherapist. Yeah, we dive into the past a little bit. But I typically love working with students, and I've worked with students who have gone through suicidal tendencies, who suicidal ideation, drugs, self harm. So some very serious things. Now, I was working with them alongside like their medical doctor, let's say. But what all the students always said about the coaching was, and they always still say, was that it was fun. It gave me a chance to express myself, and it helped me move forward. Because in my opinion, in my experience of the other forms, so therapy and counseling, there's a lot of talking in that some ways about anxiety and where that comes from. And if we go into therapy, it's like way back from childhood, which is great to talk about. And I've loved that stuff, and it's really made things clear for me. But there was not really enough action. And I find coaching for the students, especially if they've got anxiety, they're a little bit, they've never talked to someone before, a little bit nervous. We're not going back to maybe a painful experience. Then they might need to deal with this at some point in their life. I'm not saying like they need to keep that unresolved. What I am saying is that the coaching is a nice little gateway into other forms of emotional support, because it's in the present. Students haven't got to think back to a long time. It's like, what can we do now? Let's talk. Let me listen to you. And then we'll set some actions off the back to help them with their anxiety, help them move forward. And it all comes from the student. And that's really the focus. Again, when we talk about disrupting things, is this ability to empower the student to create the solution for themselves instead of being, spoon-fed and no creativity, because the system doesn't really promote that, right? Bit of a tangent here, I know. But typically, it's working with students with anxiety. Although recently I've worked with a 13-year-old boy who has consumed, you'll like this, who's the opposite. So again, very stereotypical. A lot of the boys I've worked with in the past, demotivated, parents or the school want them to, put more effort in, basically, let's say. But there's obviously reasons behind they're not doing that. We explore that. But this lad has consumed so much content from personal development at a young age that I'm almost coaching him to slow down. And it's really interesting, this, because obviously content is so accessible now. If you're 12 years old and you're looking at some slightly more shady characters like your Andrew Tates, but even if you're consuming content from a guy like, let's say you're watching Tony Robbins at 12 years old, which is super inspiring. Now, this guy's been like watching like Jordan Peterson, Tony Robbins, Andrew Tate, and he gets up at 5 a.m., has a green smoothie, does a workout, journals, and he's actually started a business. So this kid is super successful and so unbelievably driven. But his mum is, understandably, a little bit freaked that she wants him to be 13. He's only just turned 13, right? But he's got all these, consuming all this content. So I'm coaching him on basically, that's cool, appreciate that. But I'm also stepping up, being a mentor for him myself, but also showing him how to slow down, how to be a kid. He doesn't have to the pressure he puts on himself, and he erupts into these big rages of anger.
Oh, wow.
If he doesn't hit his morning routine. I'm like, you're 13 years old. So that's the other one. It's great that people are putting content out there. That's the other danger. So that was a really interesting student I've worked with recently. Not anxious, not demotivated, actually hyper motivated from consuming different types of content.
That's fascinating. And for me, it's that the setup we live in as a society, that the mind is put on this pedestal, that knowledge and like information, everything that comes through the mind is put on the pedestal as this is how you find your way around. But actually, all it does, like I'm one with a curious mind, and it's my mind that caused my depression, because I was constantly, looking for ways to kind of help myself. But because it was only going through the mind, you can never satisfy the mind. It will just always be thirsty for more, and that's not where you find peace. So first step totally is to be able to find ways to calm the mind so that you can then drop into the body, the breath and the heart, which for me is the ultimate guide. Like if you really want guidance in life, if you want to be able to use your intuition, tap into it, that's not here.
Mm.
Yeah, you need to be able to connect to the body and your gut and all of that. And that then will able to navigate you to say, yes, smoothies are great. Workout, yeah, is good, but it's not like if I don't do these five things, I'll then have a panic attack about like, oh, I'm gonna fail now. So that's huge. And like you say, it's tricky growing up with so much information out there. It's probably harder than what it was like for me. Where I still had to go to the library, if I needed something. Yeah, there was no internet when I was growing up. You're a bit younger, so you already had. But yeah, fascinating. Yeah, so for me, it's about, yes, start to use the mind as the beautiful tool that it is, but build up like discernment for kids to kind of say, okay, now I can enter a space from which I can make genuine decisions that will be of benefit to me and I am in tune with myself. Like you said, those kids most enjoyed being able to express themselves, have fun, and be, just be themselves, because that's not what majority of young people's experience is these days, is that, they've got day scheduled filled with activities, cramming the mind with lots of stuff, but they haven't got, unless they're into sports, they have no outlet really. Just just be themselves, really. Yeah.
Mm.
And we haven't even touched on social media, but yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Anything that springs to mind on the back of this for you? How good are you with using your gut and your intuition?
Yeah, I think it always comes down to that for me when making a decision.
Mm,
But I think it's sometimes hard to not make a decision, and we're stuck in this middle ground, aren't we? If we
mm,
don't decide either way, it's like, but a lot of the time we know, and we know in our being, we know in our gut, we know in our mind, our body, our spirit, whatever, what we need to do, but we put things in the way. Actually, our mind gets in the way of making that decision.
yeah.
Um, but that's really what the coaching does for students. It's empowering them to make
Mm,
good decisions for themselves. That are aligned with them, and when they take that action, they've done whatever, they've followed their gut and that instincts, and they achieved that. It's that little. It's like putting a vote in the ballot box of self-trust,
yes.
because they stick to their word, they follow their gut, even if it's a small thing, right? It's like, okay, I'm gonna do, let's say like, okay, I'm gonna do 10,000 steps a day, right? Or go to the gym like 3 times a week, or this is for adults, but for students, I'm going to revise this subject for an hour. Small example, but it's so easy to not stick to our word, and for
Mm,
like people to not stick to their word. And again, like I fall down on this. And again, I'm not saying this is me like sorted, but that my favorite one from Gandhi quote is, happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony.
mm,
And I love sharing that because I generally believe like a simple way to improve your mental health and confidence, reduce anxiety, increase motivation, is to simply stick to your word and say what you're going to do.
mm,
And for students, it's so important because for the first time, they think, oh, I might do this action step. They say it to me.
mhm,
Obviously, hold them accountable. But they then go away and do it. And they're like, wow, everything's aligned.
mm,
And that's the challenge we have in today's society, is like we've got so many distractions. We might think, I constantly get pulled for my attention. I'm assuming like you as well. It's like,
mm,
I think this thing, I might say it to someone, but because there's so much noise, this is why meditation's great as well.
mm,
I struggle to follow through on that action sometimes. But
mm.
yeah, do what you said you would has been such an amazing
Yeah.
reminder for me, and something that I pass on to students. Do what you said you would. Do what your gut tells you, or you think, and follow that intuition,
Yeah.
because it won't usually lead you astray. Now, it might create a new challenge, but you could argue that
Mm.
everything was always on the way for us. Nothing's ever in the way.
I love
And
that.
like without the anxiety that I'd face as a teacher, I would not be here right now
Mm,
doing what I do with the mental health stuff.
mm,
You know, it's a massive blessing now. And I still have my challenges,
yeah.
you know, but it's moving from that place of victim to creator.
Yes.
And that's the most important shift that I see for students as well. It's like, yes, you know, feel that emotion, feel that pain, whatever, get the violin out, the little violin, and feel sorry for yourself. And same for me. But then it's like, well, what can I do now? And it's a constant practice because we're always pulled into that victimhood. We're always pulled
Mm,
into this negative cycle because that's intrinsically how we've been able to survive, is
yeah.
to be worried, to be scared, to play like,
Mm,
to feel a certain way. But we need to start being able to be the creators of our lives, sticking to our word and living with integrity. And that is then how, if you're sticking to these little actions of like, I'm going to go to the gym or revise, you're then putting the vote in the vote box is self-trust, self-trust, self-trust. And that then leads into this build growth of personal leadership, responsibility, and doing what you said you would.
I think that's it for the young generation, is that is must be hugely empowering. That's what I'm hearing, as you talk about this, because um, let's face it, I mean, young people nowadays are not given many opportunities to make decisions for themselves, and actually be given opportunities to make decisions that, you know, might fail, but then they have to go and try again. Um, so to do something on the basis of I'm following my gut and it worked, and the feeling that they kind of get from it, hugely, hugely empowering. So, I'm all for this. Mm. And as a society also, taking our own life into our own hands and take responsibility, I think is what is really kind of what's happening right now. It's what we need to do. Come out of the
Mm.
victimhood. It's not easy, but it's hugely, hugely empowering when you step into or onto that path. So yeah. Okay. I know you have an event coming up next week, is it? Would you like to tell us about that?
Yeah. So on the subject of heart with ears, my event coming up next week is called A Heart with Ears.
Ah, amazing.
um, yeah, so this event is all about building listening skills, communication, and connection with
Mm,
others, mainly students. I'm going to share a few coaching exercises. My events are always super high energy, lots of fun, and showing how to build those better connections with people. Like I said, I do lots of work with the teachers. What do they really come up with at the end? Man, it was so good to learn how to listen.
mm,
So yeah, we'll be looking at that, exploring some empathy. I've got a great empathy tool for people and just building connections with others and teachers and students. But it's great for parents, if you're a teacher, if you're a youth worker, or anyone that just actually wants to build better relationships with other people.
mm.
Um, this is the event for you. But yeah, it's free to attend, 6th of March. I'm sure Katrina will put it in the show
Yeah.
notes if you want to attend. Um, and then alongside that, I've got another program starting called the Empowered Collective. Because
Hmm.
again, I've met so many teachers who they're like almost there's almost like a smoke screen in front of them, you
Hmm.
know, because of all the pressure of the job. It's like they
Hmm.
can't really see what they want anymore. And I think for a lot of teachers, they want to reignite their passion for education,
Hmm.
or they also want to pivot outside the classroom but haven't got the courage.
Right.
So this new program, the Empowered Collective, is for those teachers that either want to, boost, give themselves a huge boost of energy into their current teaching role, which a lot of them need, or they might want to learn, well, how can I actually maybe pivot out the classroom or drop down and do something else, still working with students, but doing some work on my terms. And that
Mm.
kicks off on the 19th of March. Again, if you're interested, I'm sure there'll be some information in the show notes.
Yeah.
Because we are really stronger together. This program and working with teachers has been so impactful. Yes, it's not transforming all the challenges in the education system, but it is carrying
Mm.
away small stones. And the ripple effect, this is why this podcast is great, because one person listens to this podcast. I'm saying, just let's say one person listens to it, take something away, and they then have a better connection with their son or daughter as a result,
Mm,
even by
mm,
2%. It's been a massive success. And this is why the work you're doing, Katerina, is so great, because it's creating little ripple effects. And that's what we need to be doing together. I always say stronger together. And I mean that.
mm.
And that's why bringing teachers together, either on the event on the 6th of March or on the Empowered Collective, could be a great way for you to start learning how to learn, grow, and become a better version of yourself.
Amazing. That's so excited to hear about this. Oh, yeah, we shout about it to the world. Absolutely. And just one little note on what you've just said. You know, we like to kind of criticize the system, find flaws on the system, but actually the system is made up of people. So like you've just described a ripple effect, you know, it's us individuals making choices, making decisions, taking action that eventually will amount to kind of, you know, changes in the system. It's just that it's not visible straight away because it just takes time, but we just need to keep going. So thank you so much for what you're doing is fantastic. So what would you like our listeners to take away from our conversation today?
That's a phenomenal question. I think let's just backtrack on this. So I see three things to take away. First thing, the biggest communication problem is that we listen to reply, not to understand. So ask yourself right now, who's one person that can really practice the skill of listening and holding back on my solution, just being a heart with ears. So that's, I think, the first thing. The second thing is the importance of, I think we've touched a lot on meditation and mindfulness.
Mm.
And if you're curious about that, there's a great book called is it a little piece of mindfulness? But loads of great meditation apps. Just try and explore it and see what happens. I think that's been a big little highlight. And then I think the last thing is, what would your life look like if you decided to stick to your word?
Mm. Oh, that's juicy and powerful. I love that.
And we'll leave
Yeah.
it there.
Yeah, no, amazing. Thank you so much. So thank you all for listening. I will share all details of Sam's upcoming events and programs. And yeah, do get in touch if you want to, yeah, follow up in any way. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Sam, for being a guest. It was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katerina. I really
So,
appreciate it.
all right. Bye,
Bye. See you.
everyone.